Amazing turnaround. Hidden truth revealed. Millionaire's mother exposed after 30 years of secret. Jake Matthews sat in the small garage, the scent of oil and metal mixing with the morning's chill. The weight of the world felt heavier than usual, as if the very machines he'd been working on all his life were trying to remind him of a truth he was desperately avoiding. His mother, Sylvia, had always been the strongest presence in his life, her resilience a lighthouse in his stormy seas. But with her unexpected death just hours ago, he felt lost, a ship adrift. He had heard whispers around town about a looming real estate auction, but to him that was the last thing to worry about. Or so he thought. Standing in front of the weathered toolbox, the dim light barely illuminating its contents, he hesitated. His fingers grazed the lid, memories of Sylvia's toil flooding his mind, her calling them treasures, even as they were covered in grime. No longer a boy, the bitterness in Jake's heart toward the man who'd helped create him, a man he'd never known, now clashed violently with the ache of his mother's absence. Ever since he found out about his father's imminent sale of their only true inheritance, that cherished family property, a fire of rage had been smoldering just beneath his skin. What kind of monster would sell land that had cradled his childhood dreams? But deep down, a gnawing doubt shattered his resolve. Was he ready for the confrontation that loomed ahead? The urgency surged in his veins, a painful reminder of the dark family legacy he never asked for. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With trembling hands, he opened the toolbox, and there it was, an envelope, old and tattered, the words, "For Jake," scribbled on it in his mother's familiar looping script. Heart racing, he tore it open and began to read. The words jumped off the page, revealing secrets buried long ago, remnants of a past he'd never fully grasped. Conflicting emotions surged within him. The anger directed at a father who abandoned him surged hot beneath his skin, while an unexpected sympathy for the complexities of human frailty scratched at his heart. He was on the verge of realizing that his identity was shaded in gray, torn between the proud history of his mother and the shadow of his father's greed. No longer just the mechanic in the town, Jake felt the relentless pulse of ambition build inside him, but so too did the fear of failure. The pressure of his past collided violently with his hopes. Would he claim what was rightfully his, or risk losing everything in a pursuit of reconciliation? The voices of the townsfolk echoed in his mind, dismissive and derisive, warning against ambitious fools who dared to reach above their station. As the sun dipped lower, signaling the approach of the auction, something inside him snapped. With rugged determination, he clenched his fists and squared his shoulders. Would he collapse into the shadows of regret, or could he ignite this search for truth? With a heart heavy yet fierce with ambition, he took a step towards destiny, the undeniable question looming larger than ever. Would he confront the past and redefine the legacy of the Matthews before it enveloped him entirely? As twilight washed over the small town, the chill in the air mirrored the turmoil churning in Jake's gut. He stood in the garage, adrenaline coursing through him, overshadowed only by the weight of uncertainty. The envelope, now crumpled in his palm, held the power to change everything. His mother's words burned in his mind, echoing like a restless spirit demanding recognition. Jake's eyes flickered to the mismatched parts and tools that surrounded him, remnants of his past. Growing up, he'd often solved mechanical problems tirelessly, coaxing life back into clunkers that others deemed lifeless. But this was a vastly different sort of puzzle, one that required not just skill, but a confrontation with his own history, his parents' fractured lives now laid bare, like the bare frames of those vehicles. He ran a thumb over the envelope, the crinkled texture reminding him of Sylvia's gentle touch when she'd pointed out their treasures. But this treasure held truths he never sought, illuminating a path drenched in shadows. Jake breathed deeply, each inhale steeped in the aroma of oil mixed with a hint of fear. What did he truly know about his father, a man who seemed more like a myth wrapped in accusations? Realizing he needed answers, his resolve solidified. A confrontation might not merely be inevitable, it was necessary. He was done allowing the past to dictate his future. The looming auction felt less like a distant event now, and more like the first stepping stone on a path he must carve for himself. Leaving the garage, Jake's mind raced with strategies. The real estate auction was renowned for its cutthroat competition, a battlefield where property could change hands before the sun even had a chance to set. But Jake wasn't just fighting for a piece of land. He was contesting an identity. His fists clenched, recalling the townsfolk's whispers of his father's greed. As he walked through the quiet streets, memories of childhood tumbled like leaves in the autumn breeze, stolen moments of playing tag on the very property that his father intended to sell. Each memory reignited a flame within him and underscored the urgency of reclaiming not just the land but also his narrative. Yet doubt flickered like a candle in the wind. Could he truly contend against a figure whose very existence had eclipsed his own life? Arriving at his destination, the community center, Jake paused at the entrance. Inside he could sense the gathering crowd, murmurs inconsistently punctuating the low hum of anticipation. He steeled himself, recalling his mother's words. Sometimes it took a little fire to withstand the storm. This thought emboldened him further, pushing past the threshold where the real estate representatives awaited. The bidding process unfurled, voices rising and falling, creating an unsettling rhythm that matched Jake's quickening heart. Each time a bid was announced, his uncertainty escalated, but with it came a sense of determination. He realized he wouldn't just be watching, he would be participating. With each passing moment, the auction transformed from an abstract possibility into a living entity, palpable and thrumming with energy. The time had come. Jake would not merely witness the destruction of his familial legacy. In this heated atmosphere, he resolved to reclaim it, to confront the man who had shaped a destiny he never wanted. As the auctioneer's gavel hovered above the sound block, poised to signify a deal that could shift everything Jake had ever known, anxiety gripped him. Would he make the leap? Would he confront the legacy of his family and discover his own place within it? This moment held secrets not just waiting to be uncovered, it demanded to redefine who Jake Matthews truly was. And as the auctioneer's voice rang clear, a final bidding cry formed in Jake's throat. Was he ready to claim his truth? The moment the gavel struck down, a wave washed over Jake, carrying both dread and exhilaration. "Sold!" the auctioneer's voice boomed, snapping him back to reality. The property was sold to a man whose smirk set off alarm bells in his chest, Henry Collins, a local businessman known for his ruthless dealings. An unmistakable urge to act surged within him, pushing through the crowd's chaos as he approached the man who had just seized his past. "Henry," Jake called, the name escaping his lips with a strange mix of defiance and uncertainty. Collins turned, eyebrows raising in mild curiosity. "Jake Matthews. I didn't expect to see you here," Collins replied, his voice smooth as silk, but Jake could almost taste the underlying tension. "It's my family's land. What is it you plan to do with it?" A simple inquiry that dangled between them, weighing like an anvil. The past, the feel of it stirred in his stomach, along with questions he never thought he'd ask directly. If he was to reclaim his legacy, he needed to confront the bruised reality of his lineage. Collins chuckled lightly. "I have plans for that piece of property. Nothing you need to worry about." His tone struck Jake as patronizing, igniting a fire deep within him. He wasn't there to be dismissed. "That piece of property is part of my history. I want to protect it, not just for myself, but for everyone that lived in this community," Jake asserted, his voice gaining strength with each word. Henry's expression turned serious, the mirth slipping. "Your history? Or is it just something you think you want? Nostalgia can cloud the mind, Jake." A challenge laced in his words, taunting the very insecurities Jake had battled for years. Jake sensed the dismissal, but also felt an inkling of power. Perhaps that was what Collins feared, heavy-handed judgment and his connection to a family legacy that once thrived. Memories of laughter, warmth, and community flooded back, potent enough to drown out the whisperings of doubt in his head. "No," Jake gritted out, grounding himself. "I've spent too long letting others determine my value, my history. I won't let that happen again." Seeing the glimmer in Colin's eye, Jake seized the moment. He would not go into this fight unarmed. He had to immerse himself fully in the business side and strategy, not just a fleeting emotional tug-of-war. This was a critical crossroads, not just for reclaiming land, but a fuller reclamation of his identity. Days turned into sleepless nights as he studied property values, zoning laws, and local businesses. Each adjustment of his perception thrust him further into understanding not just what he was fighting for, but why it mattered so much. A newfound sense of purpose emerged, urging him to transform the aching fissures of the past into concrete foundations for the future. Weekends spent combing through local archives deepened his connection to the community, uncovering forgotten tales of resilience and struggle that ran alongside his family's story. He no longer saw himself as an outsider gazing into a family narrative, but as a vital thread woven through its fabric. As he refined his strategy, Jake felt the once crumpled envelope tucked in the back of his mind shift. It was no longer just a reminder of loss, but had morphed into the fuel for his fire. The phone call he received one evening turned his heart into a skipping stone. An unexpected opportunity to confront Collins about his plans had arisen, a chance to draw the battle lines where they belonged. Confidence surged through him like a thunderous river. Jake Matthews was ready to take control, not just of land, but of his own narrative. As preparations for the meeting loomed, an unsettling thought flickered in the back of his mind. Could the knowledge he sought uncover even darker truths? Would the fight to reclaim his legacy open doors to secrets best left closed? The time had come. Would he be ready to face the hidden truths of his father's past that seemed more entwined with his own fate than he ever realized? Jake's pulse quickened as he stood before the mirror, adjusting the collar of his shirt, a ritualistic movement marking the transition from uncertainty to determination. The date had been circled multiple times in his calendar, each mark a silent reminder of the battle ahead and the unforeseen history buried beneath it. He was no longer merely a reluctant heir to lost land. He was turning into a fierce guardian of his family's legacy. Driving to the meeting felt surreal, almost like he was peeling away layers of a film obscuring his vision. Each mile represented a choice made, each breath igniting the commitment to his purpose. The sharp lines of the city blurred past, but in his mind's eye he envisioned the swath of untouched land that held both promise and peril. The potential for revitalization floated in the air, mingling with the bitter tang of betrayal. Upon arrival, his confidence met with the stark reality of the environment. The sterile hallway, the polished boardroom door. The echoes of past discussions about land deals and ventures reverberated through him. But this was different. This was personal. A reckoning was brewing, and he owed it to himself to confront the unseen ties that had shackled him for too long. Collins entered, his presence casting a shadow across the table. "Jake," he greeted, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. A veneer of professionalism hung between them, but Jake could sense the predator beneath it. "I appreciate you taking the time to meet," Jake began, grounding his voice in calmness. "I wanted to discuss your plans for the property." The unflinching gaze Collins held made Jake realize how much this meeting was a duel, each word a weapon, and he had to wield them carefully. "The town sees it as a chance for development, and I can assure you, it will benefit everyone," Collins replied, his tone patronizingly cordial. "Benefit everyone, or simply enrich you?" The words slipped from Jake almost instinctively, a culmination of his studies, community narratives, and the voices he'd encountered during his research. It was now or never. "Hope you aren't here for some sentimental preservation," Collins countered dismissively, though an edge crept into his voice. "Nostalgia can be a dangerous enterprise, Jake." For a moment Jake hesitated, the taunts of his past and self-doubt creeping in. But the clarity of purpose washed over him like an incoming tide. "It's more than sentimentality. It's about recognizing the value of history that shapes our future." Jake drew courage from the stories he'd discovered, each one a thread in the fabric of his resolve. "There are hidden potentials there, Henry. The locals deserve a chance to revive their memories, not be run out of town for profit." Collins shifted in his seat, annoyance flickering across his features. If you think that place can be revived, you're incredibly naive. Jake leaned in, anchoring himself in the moment. What if I told you I have support? I'm prepared to gather both local leaders and investors who see the value of this land differently. I could lead an initiative, with or without you. A charged silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. Collins's expression morphed from amusement to a calculative glare. You think you can challenge me? 2 months ago you were just a bystander. 2 months ago I was lost. Now I've learned to fight for what's mine. Each syllable solidified his conviction, and he saw Collins briefly falter. But as the tension mounted, a thought struck Jake with the clarity of lightning. And what about my father's involvement in the past? There are rumors, Henry, stories that he was privy to dealings that could shed light on how you came to acquire that property. Collins's smile vanished, replaced by a fierce glare. Watch your mouth, Jake. Jake's heart raced, fueled by a mix of fear and adrenaline. The stakes were rising, but he couldn't back down now. I need the truth out in the open. No more shadows. The storm brewing behind Collins's eyes revealed primal anger. Jake realized he was circling a dragon's lair, revealing ancient secrets buried beneath layers of deceit. Let me tell you something, Collins sneered, voice low. Some truths are better left undiscovered. What had begun as a struggle over a piece of land had illuminated a labyrinth of hidden agendas and dark connections. The room buzzed with tension, and Jake knew they stood at a precipice, a threshold that could untangle a legacy defined by either light or darkness. Was Jake truly ready to confront what lay on the other side? The answer buzzed in his veins, for the real battle might not just be about land, but about unraveling a much larger conspiracy dug deep within his family's past. As they faced off in the boardroom, Jake understood the stakes had become personal, and he was in too deep to retreat. Would he be brave enough to plunge into the unknown, or would he allow fear to dictate his path? Only time would reveal the depth of his resolve. The silence in the boardroom hung like fog, thick and oppressive, almost tangible. Jake assessed Collins, his calculated anger sparking a new wave of determination within him. No longer did he feel like a mere pawn. As he stared back, something inside him shifted. He was becoming a strategist in this dangerous game. Let's discuss what lies beneath the surface, Collins said sharply, drawing out the meeting's tension as if it were a weapon. His voice, while smooth, carried an undercurrent of threat. You're playing a dangerous game, and it may end up costing you more than you think. Jake's resolve solidified. Fear and doubt danced at the edges of his mind, but he pushed them aside. I'm aware of the risks, Henry, but I'm done hiding in the shadows of my father's legacy. He allowed the weight of his past to surmount briefly before he resumed. The past may be buried, but it doesn't have to dictate my future. Collins shifted, his unease revealing the cracks in his composed facade. Jake seized the moment, leaning in slightly. What happened back then has implications for both of us. If my father was involved in anything shady, this isn't merely an inheritance. It's a call to set things right. Now the two men were devoid of pretense, stripped down to their core motives. A direct confrontation sparked, and a moment of vulnerability unspooled between them, as Jake anticipated the answer he sought. You don't know what you're asking for, Collins warned, his tone now steely. The truth could bury you. Then give me the truth. I'll take the risk. Or are you afraid of what it might reveal? The accusation was sharp, cutting through the tension with surgical precision. Collins straightened, his demeanor shifting, calculating the threat of exposure. Every fiber of Jake's being screamed for honest confrontation. More than just the land at stake, it was a reclaiming of story, his story. Digging into your father's affairs could throw us both into a whirlwind, Collins remarked, his voice scarcely above a whisper. He seemed to falter for the first time, even if only briefly. Jake sensed the shift in power dynamics, the way Collins clenched his jaw as though fighting against the tide of truth. That sounds like a personal problem, not mine. You used my family's misfortune to benefit yourself. You owe it to me and everyone else affected to come clean. Jake could feel the pulse of adrenaline as he moved past Collins's barriers, guiding the conversation instead of simply reacting to it. It was liberating, yet terrifying. facing the man who had long benefited from Jake's past instability. Just as the tension peaked, there was a rap on the door. A young intern peeked in, interrupting the duel of wills. "Excuse me, Mr. Collins, there's a call. It's urgent." Jake took the brief moment of distraction to rein in his emotions. A new resolve emerged, a deeper understanding that unraveling the past needed more than just confrontation. It would require strategy, alliances, and perhaps secrets of his own. He glanced at Collins, who was visibly agitated by the interruption, but also dubious of the situation unfolding. "I'll give you a choice, Henry," Jake proposed, his voice steady despite the tumult in his mind. "You can either help me uncover the truth, or I'll take matters into my own hands. The clock is ticking." Collins frowned, deliberating as he absorbed the weight of Jake's words. It was clear the stakes far exceeded mere monetary decisions. This was a question of legacy and self-identity. With an exhale, Jake recognized that standing his ground was a form of power. Each heartbeat echoed not just with the potential loss of the land, but with the awakening of his own latent authority. Collins finally broke the silence. "You've grown since I last saw you, but you need to tread carefully. Not everyone plays by the same rules." The conversation was shifting, becoming a chess match not just for land but for truth itself. With Collins momentarily caught off guard, Jake sensed an opportunity. "What if the truth is the key to accessing something greater?" he replied, his voice carrying the weight of conviction. "Can you afford to drain this opportunity dry?" And just as the air thickened again with unspoken words and possibilities, Collins hesitated, leaving Jake's future hanging on a fragile thread. What would it take for both of them to emerge whole from this battle? One question remained. Could Jake harness the complexity of his father's legacy to carve out a new existence, or would the past devour him whole? Jake leaned back in his chair, the challenge hanging in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. It was clear that Collins was wrestling not only with the implications of his answer, but with the risk of what this tangled history could unleash. The boardroom felt increasingly claustrophobic, each silent moment stretching out as Jake's resolve strengthened. He was prepared to navigate whatever storm lay ahead. Collins broke the silence after what felt like an eternity, his voice low and cautious. "You really have no idea what you're getting into, do you?" "Maybe not fully," Jake said, his tone unwavering. "But I am done tiptoeing around other people's secrets. Those secrets are suffocating me." The electric tension shifted. Jake was no longer the inexperienced heir clinging desperately to his father's legacy. He was engaging in a mental duel, a battle of wits where he pressed for clarity and fought for agency. Precariously thrumming on the edge, he was finally poised to stake his own claim on the narrative of his life. "That estate isn't just yours, Jake. It's intertwined with powerful players, with a hidden past that—" Collins hesitated, his face revealing a flicker of uncertainty. "Your father made choices, decisions that affected many. You might think you're ready to confront that history, but consequences could spiral." Jake's mind raced. This was not mere business or property at stake. It was a philosophical confrontation of legacy and identity, a direct clash with expectations. "If what you're saying is true, then isn't it my responsibility to unveil those consequences? If I spit into the wind, I shouldn't be surprised when it returns soaked in my face." As the words escaped him, Jake felt a stirring inside, a fierce combination of anger and control igniting a new sense of direction. He was no longer bound by the strings of others' choices. This was his chance to carve a new path, one that could redeem the twisted mess of his father's past. "Jake, I would advise a different approach," Collins said, the authority of his tone striving to loosen Jake's grip on the moment. "Digging too deep could unearth entities that are happy to bury anyone who gets too close." "Then let the dust rise," Jake countered, finally relishing the role of the intentional disruptor. "I'm ready. The truth that surfaces will be a reckoning, but it's also an opportunity to redefine my legacy." In the shifting turmoil of the conversation, Jake caught sight of a window. Light flooded in, illuminating the stark contrasts between their positions. He had the chance to cast aside those who thought themselves untouchable. It invigorated him amidst that stark boardroom felt more like a battlefield. Just as he felt emboldened, Collins's phone buzzed on the table. He grabbed it, glancing down at the screen. His face paled slightly, and for the first time, Jake detected genuine concern beneath the layers of calculated ambition. "Who is it?" Jake pressed, curiosity piqued. Collins hesitated, torn between the need to protect his own interest and revealing something that could shift the entire game. "It's someone on the outside. They know about your father and are demanding a meeting. They claim to have information." Questions ignited within Jake as the possibilities swirled. What kind of information? And more importantly, what could this mean for his own ambitions? He felt a surge of urgency as he leaned forward, fully aware that this could be a turning point. "We need to take that meeting. Whatever it is, I'll confront it head on." "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Collins asked, his gaze piercing, testing Jake's resolve one more time. "More than you know," Jake answered, the weight of his answer infusing him with strength. He could feel himself shifting yet again. In front of Collins, he was no longer merely competing for a stake in the family legacy, but forging an identity out of shattered expectations. Collins finally nodded, the weight of the situation breaking through his hardened demeanor. "Then let's meet. We'll need to proceed with caution." As Collins set the arrangements, Jake's mind tangled with anticipation and fear. The collision of his father's past with his own future lay just beyond the horizon. Momentum surged within him, a revelation of untapped potential waiting to unfurl. He was ready to reclaim that blurred line between his family's shame and his own destiny. Just as they were about to finalize the details, a new thought seeped into Jake's mind, tauntingly lingering. What if this lead would unearth more than he bargained for? What if the truth held fragments of himself he had yet to discover? And as he pondered these questions, a flicker of determination ignited within him once more. The time had come to cross into a territory fraught with risks, one that promised answers, but could also carve his existence anew. The next chapter in his life was unwritten, but he knew one thing for certain: the moment of truth approached quickly. Would he stand firm, or would the legacy he sought to reclaim swallow him whole in the end? The meeting loomed ahead, a specter that both thrilled and terrified Jake. As he prepared for the encounter, he couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in his gut, the reality that revealing the truth about his father's past could dismantle the fragile structure of who he thought he was. It was a disorienting thought, but also exhilarating, like standing on the precipice of a vast unknown. Jake dialed in the address Collins had sent him, a location that was anything but inviting. The chosen cafe, nestled in a secluded part of the city, had an air of exclusivity that felt charged with secrecy. He arrived early, pacing outside, rehearsing his thoughts, crafting the narrative in which he would emerge as more than just lost potential. As he stepped inside, the ambience shifted. The subtle murmur of hushed conversations contrasted sharply with the chaos in his mind. He spotted Collins at a corner table, brows knitted with discernible tension. Collating the shards of his scattered thoughts, Jake took a seat opposite him. "Do you have any idea who we're meeting?" Collins asked, his voice low and tight, revealing the pressure of the situation. "Just someone. Someone who knows about my family," Jake replied, his certainty edging into defiance. The door swung open, and an older man stepped in, his demeanor immediately commanding attention. A well-cut suit added an air of authority, but the weariness etched on his face hinted at battles long fought. "Jake Collins," he greeted, locking eyes with Jake, his intensity palpable. "Just Jake," he corrected himself, feeling the weight of that title press against his chest. "Then let's cut to the chase," the man said, settling into his chair. "Your father's choices have consequences. Consequences for you, more than you realize." Jake's pulse quickened. "What do you know?" "I know your father hid things," the man said, leaning forward. "Things that could ruin lives, including your own. And it's time you understood the full extent of his legacy." With every poignant word, Jake felt layers of his resolve begin to peel back. He was dancing on a tightrope that threatened to snap beneath him. "I've taken steps to confront my past," he stated, a new sense of clarity washing over him. The man chuckled, darkly amused. "And so you wish to confront a legacy of duplicity, armed only with determination?" He leaned back, assessing Jake. "You're like a child playing with fire. wondering only how bright the flames burn without understanding the ash they leave behind. Those words dug deep, but Jake refused to yield under their weight. "I'm not afraid of the flames. I need to know the truth." "Truth has a price," the man cautioned. "You'll find that the truth can swallow you whole. Your father's secrets are not yours to bear lightly." "But what if they are?" Jake countered, emboldened by his own conviction. "What if embracing those truths can reshape my identity entirely?" The man's gaze flickered with intrigue before he continued, revealing a narrative that made the room feel smaller, more suffocating. "There's a woman, an essential piece of your father's past. She's been waiting in the shadows, and the information she holds could potentiate a shift not just in your legacy, but in how the world perceives you." Jake's breath caught in his throat. "My mother?" he asked, knowing intuitively that this was the crux of the matter. The man nodded slowly, a flicker of empathy mingling with professionalism in his demeanor. "You need to prepare yourself. Meeting her could either solidify your path or destroy what little you thought you knew of your family's legacy." The implications wrapped around Jake's mind like vines, creating a web of uncertainty. This was more than just a professional decision. It was an emotional litmus test that would challenge his understanding of self. As the conversation shifted in the cafe, Jake's heart raced with anticipation, torn between fear of the past and a burgeoning desire to reclaim control of his narrative. Questions nagged at him. Was he ready to face the potential truths that stood in the shadows of his life? Could the integration of his father's concealed world foster a transformation, or would he find himself consumed by it? With the shadow of his father's choices looming closely above him, the next step felt both daunting and essential. He caught the man's keen gaze, ready to plunge into the depths of the hidden truth. "Can you arrange the meeting?" Jake asked, his voice steady, yet his insides roiling with anticipation. "Yes, but it won't come without a price," the man replied ominously, preceding a smile that could not conceal the danger simmering beneath. As Jake absorbed those words, he understood. His journey had shifted gears. The stage was now set for an encounter that would alter everything he thought he knew. His legacy awaited, shrouded in secrets yet to be unveiled. Would he have the fortitude to confront the mother he'd lost and the father he was just beginning to understand? With every inch closer to unveiling the past, the finality of approaching truths etched a daring question in the back of his mind. How much of himself was he willing to sacrifice for the sake of redemption? The sun had barely risen when Jake's phone buzzed insistently beside him. He had barely slept, each tick of the clock like a drumbeat in his chest, echoing the weight of the upcoming meeting. He rolled over, squinting against the bright screen. The message was from Collins, 9 a.m. "Be ready, I'll pick you up. Be ready." He hardly had time to process the urgency before he found himself in the shower, water pounding against his skin. The spray felt numbing. It was less about cleansing and more about washing away the anxious knots coiling in his gut. Yet with every breath, the reality of what he was about to face loomed larger and more inescapable. Collins pulled up at precisely 8:45, eyes scanning the street as Jake stepped outside. The drive to the designated spot was quiet, tension weaving through the air like fine silk. Jake's mind raced with questions, each one trailing the last like shadows. Would this confrontation grant him the closure he craved, or would it drag him deeper into a mire of uncertainty? As they approached a modest building that lacked any indication of its importance, Jake felt the walls close in around him. "You ready?" Collins asked, his voice steady, a stark contrast to the turbulent thoughts swirling in Jake's mind. "No," he said, and instantly regretted giving voice to his doubts. But revealing the truth about his mother and father felt like standing in front of a locomotive, helpless to stop its charge. They entered the building, a stark reception area leading to a series of indistinct hallways. Jake's heart raced as Collins led him down a corridor lined with photographs, each framed moment a reminder of the lives lived in the shadows. Eventually, they reached a door marked "Confidential." Collins nodded reassuringly and stepped aside. Jake took a deep breath. The air felt different on the other side, heavier with expectation and the scent of old wood. Sitting in a simple office chair was an older woman, her features softened by age but unmistakably familiar. It was a face echoing in the corners of his memory, a ghost from a past he had long buried. "Jake," she said, a mix of surprise and something akin to dread flooding her expression. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "Mom," he blurted out. The word felt like a stone slipped out of his grasp, plunging into a vast chasm of unresolved emotions. Her eyes shimmered, and in that moment, Jake saw the flicker of years spent cloaked in silence and secrets. "How much do you know?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, each word laden with hesitation. "Enough to be here," he replied, resentment bubbling beneath the surface, shockwaves of abandonment and longing clashing with the present. "I found out about you, about everything. The truth is, I'm not just here to know the past. I'm here to confront it." The vulnerability in Jake's voice made her recoil as if struck. "Jake, some truths can shake you to your core. They change how you see everything." The gravity of her words hit Jake like a baseball bat across the chest. This was it. This was the moment that would either bind them together or sever whatever fragile connections remained. "I know that, but I refuse to be a prisoner of the past any longer. I want to understand why you left, why you never reached out." She hesitated, and in that silence Jake braced himself for the storm ahead. Would she choose to be defensive, pulling back once again as had always been her inclination, or could they forge a bridge over the chasm that had long divided them? His mother leaned back, her fingers intertwining nervously. "Your father was a dangerous man, Jake. He did things that put you in jeopardy. I thought leaving was the only way to protect you." Protect him. The word felt ironic, a shadow of what he had lived without her guidance. "But the truth can protect me too. Don't you understand that?" The intensity in the room thickened. Jake's heart raced as she opened her mouth, and he braced for the revelations that could change everything he thought he knew. Did he possess the strength to accept the reality behind her fears? "Jake," she started, her words cutting through the charging atmosphere. But then her voice broke, faltering as if swallowed by a more significant shadow. With the past hanging heavily in the air, Jake steeled himself, ready to break the barrier between them. "What happened to my father, and why did you stay silent all these years?" But as the words left his mouth, he felt an undeniable shift within himself. He was not just a son confronting his mother. He was becoming an architect of his own identity, ready to dismantle decades of silence and emerge reborn. "Are you prepared for what you might discover?" his mother finally responded, a question laden with fear of the consequences her honesty could unravel. The room crackled with tension, and in that moment, Jake understood that every step he took would demand a sacrifice. The legacy of his father, the shadow of his mother, all were threads leading back to him, demanding vital consideration. Would he emerge renewed, or simply further enshrouded in their tangled web? Time hung suspended as he awaited her answer, each second ticking by like a countdown, heralding the end of ignorance and potentially the beginning of his liberation. Jake's heart thundered in his chest as he stared at his mother, her words hanging in the charged air. It was as if the gravity of her secrets had slammed the door shut on his childhood, locking out the light and leaving behind only shadows. In that moment, the unseen bridge he had yearned to build felt both tantalizingly close and unbearably distant. The flicker of vulnerability in her eyes challenged him. He was standing on unfamiliar ground, a mixture of confusion and determination swirling through him. Despite the weight of his mother's past, Jake sensed a flicker of hope, a chance to confront his own ghosts and not simply inherit their pain. "Mom," he said, his voice steadier now, grounded by the clarity of his purpose. "I can't carry the burden of silence any longer. If you choose to tell me what truly happened, it may finally set both of us free." Her gaze faltered, the resigned look of someone trapped between two worlds that no longer made sense. She seemed to deflate, her shoulders slumping as if the walls of her carefully guarded life were crumbling. "Your father," she began, but paused, the name stalling between them, a spectre haunting the very fabric of her words. "I don't care about his flaws," Jake pressed, leaning in, urgency tingling in his veins. "I want to know the truth about him, about us." A deep breath escaped her, filled with layers of unresolved history. He was involved in illegal activities, serious ones. Her voice trembled, revealing the fear that had dictated so many of her choices. The moment I realized that, I knew you couldn't grow up in that world. I believed leaving was the only option. Jake recoiled slightly, the revelation hitting him like a punch. The father he had idealized had been a criminal, a figure swathed in shadows that encapsulated both danger and betrayal. He could feel resentment creeping in, mixing with a profound sense of loss for the father he never truly knew. "And what about me?" he challenged, torn between anger and empathy. "Didn't I deserve to know? I lived my entire life searching for answers, questioning why my family was missing. That absence has shaped me." The silence that followed felt dense, a tangible force pushing against them. Jake searched his mother's face for traces of regret, but found only a mixture of pain and hesitant openness. "I thought I was protecting you," she admitted, vulnerability coating her words. "But in truth, I was protecting myself." The admission struck a chord within Jake, resonating with the core of his own struggles. "We both need to be brave, Mom. We need to face the shadows together. I can't continue to live in a world where the truth is buried." He watched her internalize the weight of this moment, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It dawned on him how deeply the past was woven into their identities. He didn't just want her to unearth her truth. He knew now that he had to unearth his as well. "Can we start over?" Jake suggested, though doubt laced his voice. "Can we build something new from this?" His mother considered him, the flicker of hope in her eyes mirroring his own resolve. "It won't be easy," she warned. "There are more secrets to face. You may not like everything you discover." But Jake pressed forward, the taste of defiance sweet on his tongue. "I want it all. We can't keep living in darkness. The truth is our only way to truly exist." As they stood there, ready to confront their intertwined past, an unexpected realization flooded over him. This was not just about reconciling with his mother. It was about confronting his assertive self. The years of uncertainty had birthed a determination he never knew existed. In that powerful exchange, Jake understood that acknowledging the truth would not only allow him to reclaim his identity, but would also serve as a catalyst for growth. He no longer simply wanted answers, he wanted transformation. But just as he felt the first stirring of liberation, an unsettling thought weighed heavily on him. Would the revelations they unearthed lead to healing, or further unravel the fabric of their lives? As Jake prepared himself for the potential storms ahead, the door to a hidden room creaked open, another secret lurking in the shadows yet unnamed, waiting to be revealed, threatening their fragile bond. He could sense that the next moment would challenge everything he believed about family and trust. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, the question echoing in the room, highlighting the intensity of what lay ahead. Little did he know, the answer would unravel more than either could have imagined. The air buzzed with a tense anticipation as Jake settled into the moment, ready to confront the past and redefine his future. He and his mother sat across from each other, tension crackling like static. As they faced the truth, Jake felt the weight of years pressing on his shoulders, but within that burden was a burgeoning strength born from determination. "Tell me everything," he urged, voice unwavering, the urgency of understanding now eclipsing his fears. This was not just about him getting closure, it was about understanding the tapestry of their lives that had been woven together through decisions made in silence. His mother hesitated but then nodded, seemingly steeling herself. "Your father was involved in smuggling. Real estate was just a front. His choices put us in constant danger, and the moment I realized the full extent of it, I ran. I thought I'd save you because I believed I was protecting you." With each layer she peeled back, Jake felt the connections to his identity shift, reshape, solidify. At that moment, a powerful realization swept over him. He was not merely an extension of his father's legacy. He was a vessel for the truth and the opportunity for restoration. "Everything you did was to shield me, but it also cost us our bond. I deserved honesty, Mum. We both did." Her eyes glistened, and an unmistakable sorrow permeated the atmosphere. "I know that now. I was so lost in fear that I didn't realize I was harming us both. I thought silence was my only weapon, that it would keep you safe." "Silence can no longer be our weapon," Jake declared. "Let's speak the truth, no matter how painful. I refuse to be bound by shadows any longer." As their dialogue continued, Jake's resolve deepened, forming a bridge across decades of misunderstanding. The more they talked about his father's choices, the impact on their lives, and the community, they began to weave together a narrative that was both painful and redemptive. "Have you considered what claiming our story could mean for us?" Jake asked. "The truth could liberate you from your past, and it could empower me to forge my own identity, separate from my father's mistakes." His mother's expression softened, reflecting the possibilities of such an acknowledgement. "I want that, Jake. I want to confront what he did, to face those left in the wake of our family's choices, together." The conversation carved a new path, not just for Jake, but for his mother as well. The atmosphere shifted. It was like the heaviness of years began to lift as cracks of light filtered through their shared honesty. He saw hope flicker in her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, they could begin to rebuild the connection that had been severed. Days turned into weeks, and their momentum burgeoned, leading to uncomfortable but necessary discussions about the hidden legacy that loomed over them. They recognized the necessity of reaching out to those harmed by his father's actions, allowing fresh air into their long stagnant lives. Jake found himself increasingly at the helm of this transformation, ready to confront his father's past, but also hungry to redefine his own narrative. He began to organize a community meeting to discuss ways to rehabilitate the land that had been at the center of conflict for too long. He wanted everyone, those who had felt the trauma of his father's choices, to reclaim their ties to that shared history. And when he stood in front of a gathering of community members one warm evening, the remnants of fear vanished. He felt a solid confidence blossom within him, a competence that came from knowing the truth that he had unearthed alongside his mother. "This land belongs to all of us," Jake declared, pulsing with surging energy. "Together, we can honor the memory of our past and reshape our future. I want to listen, I want to learn, and I want to support our community." The response was immediate. Voices erupted, sharing stories of the land, their families, and the void created by the shadows of the past. People began to work together to rebuild what the family had lost, not just in terms of land, but in terms of connection and healing. As Jake stood amidst the conversations, he felt an exhilarating rush of satisfaction. They were reconstructing a narrative of resilience, grounded in their shared evolution. His achievements no longer were merely personal, they melded into the very fabric of healing a community. A few weeks later, standing side by side with his mother on that land brought a familiar warmth to his heart. The first fruits of their labor sprang forth vibrantly around them, visible markers of the love and support the community had shown. Jake could hardly believe how far he had come, from hiding in the shadows of his past to standing proudly amid the remains of despair, now rising as a symbol of hope. He looked at Sylvia, her expression one of quiet pride, and clasped her hand. "We did this." "Yes, we did," she replied softly. In that moment of unified satisfaction, they both recognized their individual transformations, how they had both moved from the boundaries of their own unresolved stories into a realm of healing. Jake Matthews had achieved not just a reclamation of the land, but a reclamation of his identity. He stood taller now, solidified by the truth he had the courage to face, finally at peace with his past and emboldened by a future overflowing with possibilities. This desire and drive had transformed him fundamentally, no longer merely reactive to the shadows burdening his legacy, but an active participant in reshaping its narrative. The echoes of once painful legacies intertwined with fresh hope resonated through the community as Jake finally embraced all he had fought for. This was where his journey as an individual culminated, not in the shadows, but in the radiance of genuine achievement through facing challenges head-on. So to everyone reading this, now is your moment. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. I promise to keep delivering these inspiring narratives. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this powerful ending, and don't wait even 1 second to share this story with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.